Hello everyone, this is the Nanobox Razmatazz, a digital drum synth by 1010 Music, and one of the coolest sound design jobs I've ever had.
Razzmatazz is a digital drum synth, and like the other nanoboxes in this series, Raz has an extremely small form factor. The touchscreen is great for creating new sounds and tapping out your own beats, which can be recorded in real time or step by step in the Super Stepper. I had the honor to be one of the sound designers for this project, working beside drummer, sound designer, and living legend, Reek Havok. Together we made 120 presets, and the first 60 are mine. Razzmatazz has 3 available sound sources, 2 FM oscillators, and a sample wave file. You can import a wave or sample your own using the line input. Advanced wave file playback includes clip and slicer modes. Designing sounds in Razzmatazz is fast, intuitive, and quite honestly, a lot of fun. In this demonstration, I took a basic snare model and altered it using the FM feature. Use Raz in your tabletop setup, or expand your digital drum sounds with Raz using the MIDI inputs. It works great with my Roland TD-17. And also my PreSonus Atom. Let's check out the Super Stepper. Long press the home button to access the teleporter page and tap the sequence button. You get 16 pattern slots. Press the top left hamburger to access copy, paste, clear, and double sequence link. Page right to access the Super Stepper. You can select from 8 pad sounds. The pip indicator to the right shows you what section of the sequence you are in, depending on the number of steps you set. Page right again to access the velocity sequencer for each step and pad. Page right once more to change the step length and step count. Patterns are set to 16 by default. There aren't any more pages after that, so press the top right measure indicator to access the sequencer's transport. Here we have BPM, swing, tap, tempo, and metronome. Creating a pattern in the Super Stepper is fast, fun, and intuitive. Let's start with an empty sequence. Choose a pad and drop a note in the desired steps. I think I'm getting ready to drop some real-time recording in from the pads. In order to do so, sometimes turning on the metronome helps keep time. Let's double the sequence length. We can also record parts in real time by pressing record on the transport. And now we can tap pads in real time to record them. Now let's hop on over to the velocity sequencer and change the velocity settings for some of the hi-hat parts. If for some reason those changes don't seem to be doing anything, you'll have to go into that individual pad's envelope settings and adjust the velocity range there. If this is set to 0, you'll just get the same velocity level across the board no matter what. So let's go ahead and crank that up. This also applies to external MIDI triggers. If the pad's not responding to velocity via your controller, then go back and check out what I showed you in the envelope settings for that pad. See you at Synthplex.
Hey everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel once again. This is Jason, your host, and I'm here with my old friend Aaron Higgins, and really stoked to Aaron to have you today on the show. And we go way back, probably late 90s or something. So
yes, we do.
Cool.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule and hanging with us. And so Aaron, if you don't mind, I'll just say that Aaron is like an entrepreneur. He's very talented, and he has had several successful businesses over the years. And his most recent involvement is called 1010 Music. I'm sure a lot of people watching are familiar with your company. If you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about that, that'd be really cool.
Sure. So 1010 Music is a small boutique music gear company that we specialize in touchscreens. We took all the best ideas from plugins and from iOS apps and repackaged them into Eurorack modules and tabletop gear. Originally started with something called the Bitbox, which is a sampler, looper, clip player, employing a 3.5-inch touchscreen, and is a module that's been on the market now for about 5 years, all the way on to just now where we released a smaller compact unit called the Nanobox, which Jason has there in the back. There's two of them. There's a red one and a yellow one. Jason's showing off the Lemon Drop, which it's just a granular polyphonic synthesizer, up to 4 notes of poly with 2 oscillators. So you get a total of 128 grains across 2 different files and a sub oscillator at the same time. We do a variety of things. Largely by nature of having touchscreen based hardware, you're doing a lot of the same software based stuff, of course, with the additional burden of having to build hardware. But that gives you a lot of important control and flexibility, like choosing what the form factor is, choosing what the ins and outs are, how many channels do you have, throwing some physical knobs and some physical interface and physical transport buttons on it. So we've really enjoyed the opportunity to do some cool stuff in that space. It's great to be working with people like Jason, who can do some incredible sound design and really bring things like the black box to life. So it's very much a collaboration with a lot of talented people.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. And it's kind of like, you're given this task, like, especially, your devices are already small, but now you're getting even smaller. So, that's kind of like, let's see, how can we work with the limitations of the size of the device and still make everyone happy? And like you said, with different ins and outs and things that you can cram into the the software and then give accessibility via 2 knobs. Like, I mean, this is crazy. And by the way, the build of this little guy is pretty cool. I mean, it's plastic, but these knobs are great. Like, it just feels really solid right here. And the touchscreen is very nice. And the funny thing is, like, speaking about size with this, I needed something. It's funny, like, I just really needed a tiny little ambient generator, like ambient soundscape generator for like my little tabletop setup over here, because it's on top of a bookshelf and I had very limited space, and this thing fit perfectly. It's so cool. And I actually did a real quick kind of test jam with it on my other YouTube channel. And I'll put a link to that up there and in the description if anyone wants to check it out. But it's so cool. You don't even need a keyboard connected to it. You can just hit the whole button and it'll play. And there's a little sequencer in there that you can modulate the sound in ways that you don't even really have to play. You can just let it drone, and it sounds very alive with the panning. It's very wide, and there's a lot of changing with the, modulating the granular synthesis position and things like that. So, and it's all crammed into this tiny little box. So, I mean, that had been fun and challenging, just figuring out what and I'm sure you have a mega list of features and things, and then you guys have to keep maybe kind of chiseling away at it until it just fits.
Yeah. No, it's certainly any product development. There's always a enormous list of features, and you can't make everybody happy, and you can't even make yourself happy. I mean, it's always
right.
Some amount of sacrifice of what will fit, what makes sense, what's jumping the shark and shouldn't be in there in the first place.
Right.
But we were inspired by how small is too small. I mean, if you look at your typical Euro rack setup, those knobs and cables are all crammed together in a much, much worse, more dense kind of way. Like a 2 HP module, that's a thing, but in some regards, it's a bit nuts. So we wanted to dial the nuts back a little bit and get something that does a lot in a small package, but still sits on the desktop with a lot of other stuff. If anything, we find some of the classic old gears just kind of ridiculously big, and people have brought to our attention that you could fit several of these inside a traditional keyboard, or on top of using the dead space of a traditional keyboard. So it's certainly, it's not for everybody. We know it doesn't have a knopper function, and it's does certain things well, but it's a trade-off that's great for a suitcase rig, or great for somebody with not a lot of space, or somebody in an apartment, or somebody who wants to have just a little mini setup that they can throw in their bag and set up on the fly. So it solves a number of problems, and we wanted to to ask the question, how small is too small?
Yep. And there's another one, the Fireball, and that's a synthesizer as well, a wavetable synth, I believe, and it's pretty cool. I don't have that here in the studio, but it's a little red synth.
Right. So the Lemon Drops sibling is the Fireball, which looks very much the same. It's bright red, has a bright red cable, but the emphasis is on wavetable synthesis. You can either use one of 100 some wavetables that we build into it, or you can load your own. So if you access to stuff online, you can put any number of different wavetables onto the micro SD card, which means enormous amount of space. I mean, kind of almost ridiculously big. You'll sooner get tired of having so many presets than you will run out of micro SD space. So it's fun to play with that stuff. It's also gives you sort of the ultimate flexibility in creating a wavetable that goes from A to Z, or B to F, or whatever you need. And whether it's sampling something or recreating some sound, or just making your own thing. It's a very different way to work, but it's in many ways similar to how the Lemon Drop works. Same ins and outs, same reliance on a micro SD card that lets you easily import and export your own samples, and it has some very basic built-in control of the notes, but really comes to life once you hook it up to an external keyboard or a sequencer. Right.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I think having the SD card, and that's one thing, a lot of your boxes, I do have the black box here, which is really cool. A drum machine sampler type, kind of like a 4x4, MPC style, kind of grid on it and whatnot for triggering samples. And then blue box, digital mixer. So, and they all have, it's so cool. They all have a little SD card for updating and then storing your data. And that's just so great. I mean, it's so convenient for me. I just pop it in and boom. And now I've got all my stems over there on my desktop and whatever.
We've tested cards that go up to 512 gigabytes, which, you and I are both old enough to remember using samplers with floppy disk drives. It's just utterly ridiculous, the amount of space you have. And, when our factory calls us and says, hey, we're sorry, they're discontinuing the 16 gig cards. Is okay. So if we include a 32 gig card instead, and like, okay. And, these things are, make the audio storage just seem limitless and free.
Yeah, totally. And I still have my SideQuest removable cartridge drive. It's a 44 megabyte cartridge. And I had that hooked up to my Sonic sampler in the 90s. I don't have the sampler anymore, but I still have the drive. I think it still works. You just plug it in with a SCSI port, big wide cable that weighs like a ton, and but only 44 megs. So it's crazy. I mean, that was on a big cartridge, and then they came out with zip disks and stuff later, and it just kept getting smaller. But now, I mean, it's ridiculous what you can fit on these little SD cards, and it's brilliant. That you had that on all these devices have it. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it's a great idea that we took from the Raspberry Pi that just load everything on the disk, make it so that it's interchangeable, and you can just throw one piece of hardware away and stick this disk in another piece of hardware. If you're on the road and you need to have like redundant backups, you could do that kind of thing because they're just interchangeable, humongous, and easy to put your hands on.
Right. Totally. So yeah, super stoked about those. A lot of people are, and then the word traveled really fast. I found that, the lemon drop, even like when I published something this weekend about it, like so many people commented they wanted to know more about the lemon drop. And I wasn't even really featuring it. It was more of just like a little jam session, just kind of tabletop thing with the lemon drop in it. And it's just so crazy that there's so much buzz. Like it just really, you guys with your company has been around for how long?
We were originally founded in 2016. So what is that, 7 years?
Yeah. So within 7 years, yeah, you've definitely, you hit the industry hard. I mean, 7 years now, everybody in this, if you're into music production, hardware and whatnot, they know 1010 music. And so like when these little, and it was brilliant how you announced the launch and whatnot. I thought that was pretty cool too. It was real kind of mysterious at times and quick. And then shortly after that, we got all the long technical videos, which is cool. And so there's a lot of buzz. I hope you're having a hard time keeping up with demand, to be honest.
No, we are. I mean, we've already sold out of lemon drops within our own internal collections. The retailers still have some. So yeah, it's off to a great start. Granted, the supply chain makes things a little more difficult this time around, but we're happy to be having a product at all. I mean, it's not, the price point is not exactly where we wanted it to be, but it's, happy to be here. And yeah, you're right. It's great to see a lot of buzz. There was a lot of work and preparation putting into having, lots of different reviewers and retailers ready to launch videos all at the same time. So it looks like, an explosion happens, but it's a lot of build up to make that a possibility.
I can only imagine. So, which leads me to the question that I had for you about like supply, and demand, and right now with like a lot of the like weird shortages and stuff because of the pandemic or whatever, it's like everything seems to be taking a lot longer these days, and there's some hangups maybe in China or whatever where you might get some. I don't know if that's where you get some of your electronic components, but so like. How long would you say does it take to go from, proof of concept or whatever to, especially now, recently in this day and age, to having that completed product in hand?
Yeah, it really depends. I mean, I'd say under normal circumstances, taking a proof of concept to like finished product is about a year for us. I mean, because you need to go through 3 or 4 rounds of prototypes. Mm-hmm. You need to, you're generally dealing with some sort of pre-existing assets and formulating them into something that's a next generation product. Usually for us, like sourcing a screen is a big deal. You're coming up with the enclosure, getting prototypes made of that. Like, does it fit right? Does it look right? Are the colors and the paint and the silk screen where you need it to be? And then, of course, several iterations with the software. So that's under normal circumstances. This time around, it was longer than that. I guess we went through various trade-offs to get stuff here. Okay. Under normal circumstances, we can place an order with our longstanding factory in China and get something in 3 to 4 months. This time around, it's like if we had used that standard process, it'd be sure you can have that in 14 months. But we had but we made various trade-offs and paid extra to get stuff on an accelerated basis. And that's part of the reason why the price point is what it is. It's not where we wanted it to be. It's not, the least expensive thing out there, but hey, would you rather have it now or in 6 to 12 months? It's kind of like, that's the trade-off. And then at some point, as you start to line things up, it's hard not to like pay the extra and get it all together. And so that you can ship something. I guess we're fortunate that our factory has been able to broker several deals, and plenty of the stories you've probably heard is we had issues where we ordered something in May, and then our suppliers or our factory suppliers would say that you can have that, but we're not sure when, and then you have to go like source an alternative version. In some cases, like the CPU is very specialized, and you're not going to get that from an alternative source. So you're having to just like, can you get an alternative part number? Can you buy some from somebody who has surplus? In some cases, the answer is yes, but you're generally looking at paying 2 to 5 times face value, which are like sort of ugly trade-offs, but sometimes necessary. Just a lot of like way more substitutions and, okay, you can't have that. How about this instead? And it was a lot more scrambling. I mean, it's ultimately worth it, but it was just way less straightforward and smooth than past product releases.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. And I don't know, last year or year before that, I placed an order for have you seen Sonicware, that company? The guy who makes the 8-bit. I got the 8-bit warps live in. It's such a long, weird name for synth, but and it's really cool. I saw it at NAMM a few years ago, and then it took them so long. They kept having a lot of delays, but you're fortunate enough now. You have maybe that he just didn't have kind of those sort of relationships already with people that could, like you said, could barter whatever better or faster results. But and so it took them a long time, and there were a lot of hangups and stuff. And so I was kind of wondering, you guys, it still seems pretty fast for you. Like I didn't even see this coming, like lemon drop. It was just like, boom. Oh, cool. So that's why I was curious if you had such delays and whatnot. But
yeah, I guess I will say that we could have brought something to market as early as last fall, but the delays, if anything, helped us out because it enabled us to get 2 products lined up. And so we have a product line at launch time as opposed to just one, with another one coming soon. So ultimately, I think it worked out. It just, it could have been easier. And we look forward to, hopefully late this year, maybe into next year, where prices and supply chains get back to normal and we're not fronting so much, capital to get stuff sort of pre-ordered and pre-ordered so that we can see stuff later in the year and we will be able to do things more quickly and, expeditiously.
Nice. Very cool. So, and I won't ask you, like, I know everybody wants to know, hopefully you guys have a lot more in the works. Do you plan on surprising us with something very soon, or is that something you care to share?
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair question. Okay. I mean, if anything, we've really saved up and dropped a big one here with the 2 nanobots launches. We obviously have several things in the works, most of which we're not ready to talk about, but there's more stuff coming, and we're always listening to what people are saying. We're happy to hear that this form factor is a success and that people like it. So, you might see more things in the same vein. That said, like our other products, we'd like to keep them up to date, and you can expect to see more updates there. And we're mindful of like what people are asking for and what's possible. And, it's a blessing and a curse having software. You can, constantly keep updating it and doing stuff, and it creates kind of an ongoing, obligation and expectation that you will do that.
Right. Of course. But also, with somebody saying, oh, well, the price for these is a little high, yeah, but look what they do. They have to keep updating this software for all their devices. There's a lot of time and effort, and that keeps this, it's kind of the gift that keeps on giving. You're lucky that 1010 is on top of that, because some companies, they just kind of, they send it off and you might not see an update for many years or whatever, or ever. It depends, but and it's kind of the gift that keeps on giving. It's like, you just paid for a lifetime subscription to maybe some cool new features that might pop up again in the future for that device. So that's kind of how I justify it. Plus, I know you're a boutique company, and it's just not easy. I mean, it's a music business. It's it's tough. So, but that's cool. So let's see. With that said, I think I had something I wanted to ask you, and I wrote it down because I often forget what I want to ask people. But so I wanted to just kind of get an idea about 1010 Music, the company itself. We talked earlier, and you said the company's growing. I know it was just you and maybe a couple people in the beginning. And I know that so everyone knows, and I just want to show everybody this because we are on my iOS channel. This is Looptastic. So this is where Aaron was at back in, I don't know. Well, this is on the iPad. So this is the HD version. So, but this thing goes back to the first gen iPhone, this app. And that's something we worked on. I was creating loops for it, but you guys it was mostly you, I think, programming this app, correct? Or maybe there was one other person.
No, for a while there, we had two of us, myself and another programmer, and we had a marketing person.
Right.
And then it was that effort was eventually acquired by Native Instruments and formed the backbone of Tractor DJ, the 1.0 version released. What's that now? Like 2013 or so.
Yeah.
I mean, those are some great times. I mean, it's funny you pull out the Looptastic one. Like we actually developed that. We finished the app and posted it to Apple before the iPad actually existed. We were working entirely on software simulators. It was, a giant leap of faith. Like, for example, we were, as we're submitting the product to the store, didn't we know how much RAM the iPad had because Apple hadn't disclosed that. Granted, we had to assume like, okay, more than the phone, but it was a fun time. Those early days were, really rewarding, and it was the Wild West. It was great to work with people like yourselves and just kind of a couple of guys could get together and do something miraculous, and people would just be astonished with what you could do. And the time and the reach of the App Store was pretty amazing. That anyone around the world could pick up Looptastic and hear our work and do their own music. And granted, that's sort of changed. I mean, granted, it's way more competitive, and now it's the Wild Wild West to an extreme that everybody can get in, and every high school or a college student can submit something and make a few bucks or do it for free just because it's a fun hobby. And so it's much less of a viable business now than it was at that time when we were doing, much more groundbreaking, maybe the same sort of stuff, but the level of interest and sort of the level of expectation and what impressed people was so much lower back then than it is now.
Yeah, and it was groundbreaking. I mean, I remember, Looptastic was time stretching loops in real time before GarageBand for the iPad even existed. So like you guys were already that in itself was very groundbreaking. I don't think any other app at the time when that first launched on the iPhone was able to do any of that time stretching. That was cool. I know BeatMaker was another one of the front runners, and so it was such an exciting, fun time. It was like, it kind of reminded me of like, even like back in the day when home computers were like a cool new thing, because now we have this tiny computer in our hands that we can do lots of fun things with. And it was, you're breaking free from sitting in front of your desktop, and, now you can sit on the bus and mess with beats in that way. And watch videos, and it was just so wild. Like, wow, this is the full blown. This is what we've been wanting in a phone for many, many years. And all of a sudden, Apple came out, the iPhone, and the marketing was so perfect, of course, and it took off.
No, it's fun to remember those times. It's like, oh my God, this touchscreen is amazing. Look at all these things you can do. In fact, it's funny to see it in an XY pad again. Like that's, you've come full circle.
Yeah, I was going to say the lemon drop and the Fireball had that on there. So
right. But that originated on the Chaos pad, or probably even before that. But that's at least where I first know of it. But like these are similar ideas that I whose ideas have their time has come and has come again. And that was a great proving ground. It was great to see like all the cool, innovative ideas there, to see lots of little companies going after the, any number of things from like, really you name it. I mean, name something you can do in software and you've got an iPhone app that will do it. I mean, especially in music, there's so much great signal processing and being able to show waveforms and, so many like scratching on an iPhone. And
yeah. I found an old clip actually. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's from G4 TV. Do you remember that? It was like some kind of cable network thing.
No, I don't.
Attack of the Show it was on G4 TV, and it was an iPad. I still have a copy of it on my blog. If you ever want to just see some like nostalgic iPad apps and whatnot, but they did a real short, article, video about iPad apps and creating music. And Looptastic was featured in there. And then the Baby Scratch, you mentioned the scratching, the Baby Scratch app. And I think there was one other one. Chord Electribe, the drum synth Electribe was in there. And it's just funny to see all that stuff. And like there was like actual hype on TV about it. Now nobody really talks about making beats on TV on your phone. It's on YouTube. It wasn't on cable TV or on big network or anything.
But I do remember when that stuff first came out, like that was some of the earliest exposure I had. Like, hey, you've got this cool device and you've got YouTube to show it off. I mean, that seemed like the perfect combination of watch this, listen to this. That's cool.
Yeah.
Where, we do that now, but it's like, that was some of the first opportunity to do that.
Yeah, for sure. So cool. So 1010 Music now, that's it. You're saying that the company's growing. You've got how many employees now?
Right. So we now have 4 full-time employees. That includes like a full-time developer in addition to myself. My wife pitches in any number of different things. We've got a full-time support test person, Steve. Ray is our developer. We've now got a number of different part-time people that I've lose track of. I mean, talented freelancers like yourself from time to time. Someone like Drew Newman, who did the sound development for the 2 synths. Cool. We've got a world-class industrial designer we've been working with now this entire time. The support people at the factory, do incredible work. And I'm sure that I'm forgetting someone. We have somebody taking care of orders and fulfillment, and we have a part-time support person. And so it's, quickly becomes like a lot of people, to the point that like I'm finding that like, there's lots more email than I ever thought I would be dealing with just from inside the company. And, it's a good problem to have, but yes, it's also, it enables us to do more complete, well thought out things like the nano boxes. We have 2 products at once that you both have really good UX design. Christine did a great job on planning that, and our developer did a great job of making that happen. And so we're growing up. We're able to do more sophisticated stuff that's ready to go as soon as you get the first version. I mean, I know our very first products, the 1.0 was kind of sad and pathetic, and that's no longer the case.
Right. Yeah, no, it's awesome. And then also I think Matt Yost, my business partner from Soundtrack Loops, helped with the website a little bit.
That's right. That's So
I mean,
for forgetting that, like website development.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah. Oh, and so Soundtrack Loops, just to plug real quick, we've talked about it before, but we help work on some presets for Black Box, and I want to do on our video. This will be on my iOS channel, so on the Soundtrack Loops channel, I'm planning to just do like a little lemon drop, maybe like a quick demo with some of the presets, and then that use our samples, and then maybe like a little jammy thing. I'm going to keep it under a couple minutes, nothing crazy. But if anyone's interested in that, there will be a link above and in the description as well.
Just wanted to shout out to the Soundtrack Loops Lemon Drop contribution, which is some really cool soul vocal samples, which you'll see in there. And especially vocals in particular for granular make fantastic source material. And you can just like dial it in and just kind of have a lot of fun and find, otherworldly spaces and do some very cool stuff. So thank you for making that happen.
Oh, cool. And you know what? Kudos, because I was cruising through the presets, and those vocal presets, they're just so like, they're really, really cool. And I only discovered that it came from one of our soul vocal samples. And I was like, wow, what they did to that sound, because it's more of like just kind of a
didn't
vocal.
Recognize it.
If there's anything you want to add to that, let me know. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if your audience is familiar with granular synthesis and how that works. We can talk about that if you like, but it's just that you're pulling, up to each oscillator has up to 16 different grains that are playing at a given time. They're generally from about 10 milliseconds to 1 second in length. We're using a constant sort of half football shape, this little sinusoid that makes everything blend together nicely, so you can get some really cool tones and textures and ambiances from things. We've added a whole bunch of settings to make it so you can, build your own special clouds, or start with the attack and sort of move your way into the middle. Like it's a lot of fun. It's can be quite versatile. Granted, like textures and ambiances are sort of its strong point, but you can. There is a feature that lets you play the attack and then blend into the sustain portion of a wave.
Cool. Let's see, what else do I have here? We'll just like wrap it up. It's not too crazy long. How about a little advice for some young entrepreneurs or young programmers? Any advice you could give them would be great.
Yeah, I guess I would say, if you're inspired to build stuff and you want to, make products and, potentially start a business, I guess the first and best advice you can give is like, go build something, start somewhere. Especially now, there's so many fantastic tools like Adafruit or SparkFun or, you name it. Like you can build, some kind of synthesizer or whatever, lighting or, speakers or wearables or like all kinds of like cool electronics. Go try it out. Like, get some open source tools, because there's so many of them now. Teensy is a great resource for audio stuff, where you could drop in a synthesizer and do some basic signal processing for like 10 or 20 bucks. I mean, it's play around with that stuff, see if you like it.
Okay.
If it goes well, show it to somebody, see what they think. Try and make incremental progress. And it's certainly like, yeah, what we're doing now may seem advanced, but it's like we started off small and did some of these same things. And it's not until you sort of figure out like, okay, that's promising, let's do more of that. Okay, let's fold this in too. Let's learn about that. There's so many inexpensive dev boards and great internet videos and things you can try. I mean, it's, I shudder to think about what you and I did when we were kids. Like, how do you want to learn something? You go to the library and get a book. I mean, that's,
yeah. Or buy a magazine. Remember those? Remember the little the computer magazines? What was the one for programming BASIC? They always had a snippet of BASIC that you could program.
I was a color computer, TRC-80 color computer fan, so Rainbow was the magazine for that. But I know that the Commodore 64 and various others have their own kind of
those are fun.
Ones.
So I had to wait for the next one to come out just so I could see and then you hit run and sometimes it just doesn't work and you're like,
I know, typing in a program.
Yeah.
Typing in a program from a magazine is just bonkers, but that's what we had.
Yep. Totally. So you mentioned Teensy, so that's a cool one. I'll put a link to that in the description here in the video. And then what about like those little Raspberry Pi things? Like Matt bought a Raspberry Pi keyboard. It's like a computer. It's all built into a little keyboard, or even just like little kits that involve Raspberry Pi or something like that. What do you think of those?
Yeah, I'm less up to speed on that stuff. I mean, I do have Raspberry Pi. I have played with it a bit, but I find that the more tailor-made, like smaller, more focused stuff, because with Raspberry Pi, you're typically, hey, get a Linux install, do this, and now it's kind of more onerous and burdensome. It doesn't feel as fun and sort of self-contained, and you could build something into something else and sort of leave it there. I mean, another platform I want to mention is Daisy, is something interesting that's come out that's kind of alongside the Teensy, in that it's a open computing platform that specializes in music. They have a number of different things, from your rack modules to tabletop units to guitar pedal type effects thing, like those sort of whatever your interest is. I mean, granted, my expertise is more in audio and signal processing. If that's kind of your thing, like find a toolkit that's sort of ready to go and has lots of Swiss Army enough stuff to begin with. Raspberry Pi seems a little more general purpose, and while I certainly don't want to knock it, it seems like it's more, you need to assemble more things to sort of get to a meaningful result.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. And you want, it helps to see, to kind of get instant gratification in the beginning, just because, you don't want to like,
that's right. That's right. You want to have something that you can fire up in an afternoon and be like, oh yeah, let's keep doing more of this. Whereas a Pi, I think, is going to be a little less like that and more, drudgery to get going. But, I'm sure others have different experiences than I do.
Very cool. Well, thanks for the tips. And And thanks for your time. Is there anything else you want to add to the interview?
No, I guess it's like, that's a great question regarding the entrepreneur stuff. I guess just realize that there's so many things out there that you can do. And, there's talk to the influencers. I mean, we've really benefited from talking to influencers like yourself, like other YouTubers. Like there's so much kind of free publicity. You don't need to you almost don't need to pay for advertisement. You can just sort of word of mouth carries so much, get yourself out there, learn stuff, do stuff, do it because it's fun.
Right.
Try to advance your art. I wish you the very best.
Thanks. Yeah. And it helps to have something cool to, present. So even like you said, if it's a little thing, just something.
And even if your aspirations are elsewhere, to be able to go, like part of my job at Native Instruments was hiring people. And there's really, in that space, if you're a, budding engineer or, entrepreneur looking to do stuff, like there's really kind of no excuse. It's almost like you need to have something on your portfolio to show like, hey, I did some crazy plugin, or I did some hardware project, or, here's something I can show you from my portfolio to demonstrate how good I am and worth hiring. And like, you almost kind of expect that. And that's, a great way to learn your craft and have something to show to a prospective employer.
Nice. Yes. Thank you so much. Hopefully, if those people are watching, you got some good information there. Hopefully you can take that and do something great with it. And you know what, personally, I don't have a lot of time, but it's always something like you know how it is when you're creative or whatever, you kind of want to do everything. I don't know if you're like that, but it's like, this came out. That sounds really cool. I want to try that. I want to try this. So I might even look into Daisy or Teensy after we get off this conversation, because and maybe even just kind of tinker with it for my daughter when she's only 4 now, but maybe when she's a little bit older, she might have some fun with something like that. But it's crazy. It's just, you got to make the time for it. That's the thing. You have to make the time for it. And so oftentimes it's easier to do that when you're younger and you don't have a bunch of other things going on. But also it could be for somebody who it's never too late. Somebody who has a lot of free time now, their kids are in college and they're looking for something to do too. So it's a really cool time to be alive if you have the time to reach into those little pre-made open source. Like you said, there's so much open source stuff available online. It's almost like they're waiting for you. Just have to have time for it.
Right. The challenge is like choosing where to start and like which one to use.
That's true. There's almost too much, too. There's like so many options, and I often feel overwhelmed just with the amount of like little odds and ends and pieces of gear that I have, because I want to play with all of it all at once. Walk in the room, it's all fired, it's all going through my mixer. But then I go, yeah, but this thing's really cool. Maybe I should learn a little bit more about the features in this. And then like, but then there's that.
Nah, let's get something new instead.
Yeah. And then it's like, then I just get something new. And now I'm just like, anyway, that's a whole different conversation. They call that GAS, right? Gear Acquisition Syndrome.
That's right.
Well, cool, man. Thanks, Aaron. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for the opportunity. Pleasure to speak to you.
Likewise.
Let's do it again sometime.
Excellent. So everyone go and check out 1010 Music and check out their cool equipment. And thanks for tuning in, and have a good day, Aaron. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Take care.